Hey, and welcome back to JBC English Learning Academy. My name is Laura, and I'm here to guide you on your journey to clear, confident, and natural English. If you're new here, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you never miss a lesson. Your support truly helps this channel grow. All right, take a deep breath, relax, and let's begin today's session. In this first part of our long and gentle journey together, I want you to relax, breathe slowly, and simply listen as I speak to you like a friend who is walking beside you on a calm early morning road, because our story today is about confidence. And confidence begins in a very soft and quiet place, a place inside your heart that many people forget to visit. A place that is not loud or strong or brave at first, but a place that grows when you listen to it with kindness, and I want to take you into the life of a young person named Mira, a person just like you, someone learning English, someone trying to feel more sure about herself and her voice, someone who wants to speak clearly, live bravely, and walk with her head a little higher. And maybe as you listen to her story, you will feel your own confidence waking up gently like the sun rising behind a small hill. Myra's story begins on a morning when she wakes up feeling heavy inside, not the kind of heavy that comes from carrying something in your hands, but the kind of heavy that comes from many small worries sitting quietly on your shoulders, worries like, what if I say something wrong? What if people judge me? What if I am not good enough, and what if I fail again today? These thoughts are familiar to her because she has carried them for a long time, and maybe you have carried thoughts like these too. But on this morning, Mira sits up in her bed, rubs her eyes, and whispers to herself in a very soft voice, I want today to be a little different, and she does not know how it will be different. She only knows she wants something small to change, something simple, something that feels like the first step toward a better version of herself. She gets up and opens her window, and the air outside is cool and calm, the kind that touches your face gently and tells you that the world is still fresh, still open, still full of possibilities. And in that moment, she remembers something her grandmother once told her, something she did not understand fully when she was younger. Confidence is like a small bird. It doesn't fly to you. You must hold out your hand and let it rest there slowly. This memory brings a warm but quiet feeling to Myra's heart, and she stands there for a moment, breathing slowly, letting the morning light touch her face, and she wonders, what does it mean to hold out my hand to confidence? Then she smiles a little because she realizes she is thinking too hard, and thinking too hard is one of the things that always stops her from trying new things. Later that morning, Mira walks to a small park near her home, a place she often visits when her mind feels crowded, and she sits on her favorite wooden bench, the one under a tall tree that gives soft shade and makes little shadows dance on the ground when the wind moves its leaves. She sits there with her hands in her lap, watching a group of children learning to ride bicycles, wobbling left and right, almost falling but never giving up, and she feels a gentle curiosity about them, wondering how they keep trying even when they are scared. One small boy falls, stands up quickly, dusts off his knees, and tries again with a bright smile on his face, and Mira feels something warm inside her chest, something like admiration, something like longing, and she thinks, how do they do that? How do they get up so easily? She knows adults often forget this natural courage, the courage to try again without shame, without fear, without thinking too much. As Mira watches them, she feels her mind settle and her breathing slow down, and she realizes she is learning something just by sitting there quietly. Confidence does not always come from loud actions or big goals. Sometimes confidence comes from small, brave moments where you simply try again. But then, like a small cloud crossing the sky, a new challenge enters her thoughts. She remembers she has to speak English later today when visiting a small cafe she has never been to before. She wants to practice her English speaking skills, but the idea of talking to someone she has never met makes her heart beat a little faster. She imagines ordering a drink, greeting the barista, maybe asking a simple question, but her mind starts showing her uncomfortable images, her making a mistake, her forgetting a word, her speaking too slowly, people looking at her strangely. And she feels the soft confidence she found earlier begin to slip away like sand through her fingers. She lowers her head and sighs because she knows this is her biggest challenge, not learning English itself, but learning to trust herself while using English. She wants to practice speaking, but she fears sounding foolish. She wants to grow, but she fears failing. She wants to shine, but she fears being seen. And this feeling sits with her on the bench like a heavy visitor, not angry or cruel, but familiar and stubborn. Yet something changes when she hears the laughter of the children again. She watches them fall once more, stand up again, and keep going without shame, without fear of failing in front of others, and the sight touches her deeply. She whispers to herself, if they can fall in front of everyone and still keep trying, maybe I can speak a few words without hurting myself. And this small thought becomes the beginning of a new exploration inside her mind. She starts imagining what would happen if she spoke slowly, simply, kindly to herself, the same way she would speak to a friend who is learning something new. She wonders, what if confidence is not something I must earn? What if it is something I practice, like a gentle exercise? She feels something shifting inside her, very small but real, like a seed opening underground long before anyone can see the plant growing. As she sits there, she begins to think about all the people she admires who speak confidently, teachers, storytellers, friends, and she realizes something she never noticed before. None of them were born confident. They learned confidence the same way a person learns to walk or ride a bicycle or speak a new language. They learn through practice, patience, and gentle curiosity. This realization grows inside her like a tiny flame, warm and comforting. She whispers again, confidence is practice, and for the first time in a long time, she believes it. She stands up from the bench slowly, feeling a small but important transformation happening inside her. She is not suddenly brave, she is not suddenly fearless, but she is more open, more willing, more ready to take a step, and that is enough for now. On her way back home, Mira walks more slowly than usual, not because she is tired, but because she is thinking deeply, reflecting on the morning, on the children, on the feeling of wanting to grow. She notices the gentle sounds around her, the soft wind, the distant traffic, the quiet footsteps on the sidewalk, and she lets her mind follow these peaceful sounds, allowing her heart to relax. Confidence, she realizes, is not a loud explosion of bravery. It is a quiet agreement you make with yourself, a small promise that says, I will try. She smiles a little at this thought because it feels true, simple, and human. When she finally reaches home, she stands in front of her door for a moment, holding her breath softly, and thinks about the cafe she plans to visit later. She knows she will feel nervous. She knows her hands might shake a little. She knows her voice might sound unsure. But she also knows something else now, something more important. She does not need to be perfect to be brave. She does not need to speak like a native speaker to practice her English. She does not need to impress anyone to take a small step forward. She only needs to try. And trying is already a form of confidence. As she enters her room, she looks at herself in the mirror, studying her own eyes, and she says softly, "Today, I will take one small step." This sentence feels different from all the promises she made before. It feels real. It feels possible. It feels gentle enough that she can actually do it. And that is where our first chapter leaves her, standing in front of her mirror with a small, calm smile, holding a promise that may be simple, but can change the direction of her life. And if you are listening closely, you might feel something inside you waking up too, something that says you can also take a small step today, something that says confidence does not arrive in one big moment, but in many small moments like this one. And the takeaway from this part of our story is simple and beautiful. Confidence begins quietly, inside small decisions, inside gentle thoughts, inside tiny promises you make to yourself when no one is watching. Confidence begins when you say, "I will try," even if your voice shakes. And as we move to the next part of our long journey together, I want you to hold this small truth in your heart the same way Mira holds hers. Confidence grows when you give it space to grow. In this second part of our long story, we follow Mira as she prepares to take the small step she promised herself earlier, and as she stands inside her quiet room, she feels both nervous and strangely excited. A soft mix of emotions that dance in her chest like two birds trying to fly in different directions, and while she brushes her hair and ties her shoelaces, she keeps repeating in her mind the simple sentence she said in the mirror, "Today, I will take one small step." And the more she repeats it, the more real it feels, like a gentle drumbeat guiding her forward, steady and calm, not pushing her, just reminding her. She looks out her window and sees the sunlight becoming stronger, the world warming slowly, and she decides this is the right moment to leave her home and walk to the cafe she has never visited before, the place where she will have to speak English, the place where she will test the small confidence growing inside her. She grabs her small brown bag, takes a deep breath, and steps outside, and with that simple movement, her promise becomes action. As she walks along the quiet street, she notices her senses becoming sharper. She hears the soft sounds of footsteps behind her, the distant whistle of a bus stopping, the gentle rustle of leaves. And she realizes she is paying more attention to the world than she usually does because she is thinking less about her worries and more about her purpose, the purpose of practicing her English and gently growing her confidence. The cafe is a 10-minute walk from her home, but today it feels longer, maybe because her mind is full of thoughts or maybe because she is walking more slowly than usual. But every minute feels like an opportunity for her mind to wander, to question, to imagine. She thinks about the cafe staff, wondering who they might be, imagining someone friendly, someone who smiles kindly and listens patiently. She imagines herself speaking slowly in English, using simple words, maybe making a small mistake, but continuing anyway, and she feels the familiar wave of nervousness rising again. For a moment, she wants to turn back home, but then she notices something interesting. Her feet are still moving forward even while her mind is unsure, and this makes her smile because it shows her she is stronger than her fear, even if only by a little. When she reaches the cafe, she stands outside the glass door for a moment, watching the people inside. The cafe is warm and bright, with soft lights hanging from the ceiling and wooden tables that make the space feel cozy and gentle. A few people are sitting with cups of coffee, working on laptops or having quiet conversations, and behind the counter stands a young barista with curly hair and a friendly smile. Mira watches the barista greet a customer with a cheerful, "Good morning. What can I get for you?" And the sound of those simple English words touches her mind like a warm wave. She thinks those are easy words. I understand them. I can say them too. And for the first time since she left home, she feels a soft spark of encouragement inside her. She touches the door handle, takes one more slow breath, and steps inside. The smell of coffee welcomes her, strong but comforting, and the sound of gentle music plays in the background, making the moment feel calmer than she expected. She stands in the short line, her hands quietly shaking, and she practices her sentence in her mind. "Hello, can I please have a hot chocolate?" She repeats it over and over, mentally shaping the words, trying to make them sound natural. When it is finally her turn, she steps forward, her heart beating faster, and the barista looks at her with that same kind smile. "Hi, what can I get for you?" he asks. Mira opens her mouth, and for a moment the words get stuck, but she does not panic. She remembers the children in the park, how they wobbled, fell, stood up, and tried again, and with that memory in her heart, she whispers, "Hello, can I please have a hot chocolate?" Her voice is soft and shaky, but it is clear, and it is enough. The barista nods with the same warm smile and says, "Of course. One hot chocolate. Anything else?" She shakes her head quickly and smiles a little, and hearing her English spoken back to her feels like a small victory. As she waits for her drink, she sits at a small table near the window, watching people walk by outside, and she feels something growing inside her, not a loud explosion of confidence, but a quiet feeling of pride mixed with relief. She did it. She spoke. She tried. And the world did not stop. Nobody laughed. Nobody judged her. And she realizes that her fear was much bigger in her imagination than in real life. When the barista calls her name, she stands up, collects her drink, and says a soft, "Thank you," and he answers with a friendly, "You're welcome," and that simple exchange feels like a warm handshake between two humans who share a moment of kindness. While she drinks her hot chocolate, she thinks deeply about everything that happened, reflecting on how such a small action, a few spoken words, can feel like such a meaningful step toward growing her confidence. She realizes that confidence is not built in big, dramatic moments, but in small, simple choices, like walking into a cafe, speaking a sentence in English, or saying thank you even when your voice trembles. And she feels grateful for this moment, grateful for the gentle courage that pushed her forward, grateful even for the fear that made the victory feel more real. As she looks out the window, she wonders what other small steps she could take in the future, steps that do not overwhelm her but challenge her gently, steps that help her grow slowly but surely. After finishing her drink, she stands up and walks out of the cafe, And as she steps back into the sunlight, she feels lighter, almost like her feet are touching the ground more softly. She starts walking home with a calm smile because she knows she did something important today, something that seemed small but required bravery. She begins to understand that confidence grows inside the spaces where you act even when you are afraid. The challenge was real, the fear was real, but the moment of realization that she is capable of speaking, capable of trying, capable of stepping through fear was even more real. She walks with her head a little higher, not because she is suddenly confident, but because she is becoming someone who believes in small steps. As she continues down the street, she reflects on what she learned, that confidence is not a gift someone gives you. It is a gentle habit you build slowly, like learning to breathe deeper, walk steadier, or trust yourself more. She realizes she is transformed just a little, not in a big dramatic way, but in the quiet way a seed transforms when it sends out its first tiny root. And as she reaches the door of her home, she pauses and takes one last thoughtful breath, knowing that today's takeaway is simple, beautiful, and true. Confidence grows each time you choose action over fear, even when the action is small, even when the fear is big. And with that lesson in her heart, she steps inside, ready for whatever the rest of this journey will bring. In this third part of our long journey, we follow Mira into the afternoon of the same day, a day that already feels different because of the small victory she carried home from the cafe, and as she sits on her bed with the empty cup still fresh in her memory, she begins to feel something she has not felt in a long time, a gentle trust in herself, a trust that whispers, "You handled it," a trust that grows slowly each time she remembers the moment she spoke English even though her heart was shaking, and as she breathes deeply, she starts to notice that the fear she felt earlier no longer feels like a giant mountain, but like a small hill she already climbed once. The sunlight coming in through her window paints soft gold lines across her blanket, and the whole room feels warm and peaceful, and she realizes she wants to understand why this tiny moment at the cafe feels so strong inside her. Why a simple sentence spoken in English could make her feel like she stepped into a brighter version of her life. She lies back on her pillow and thinks about her past, about all the times she held herself back because she feared looking foolish or making a mistake, all the moments she told herself, maybe next time, or maybe later. And she sees now that those thoughts came not from weakness, but from a lack of understanding. She simply did not know how confidence worked. She did not know that confidence grows from doing something small even when it feels uncomfortable. As she reflects, she realizes a challenge she never noticed before. She has been waiting for confidence like people wait for a bus, thinking it will simply arrive one day, thinking something or someone will deliver it to her. But today she sees the truth. Confidence is not a bus you wait for. Confidence is a pair of shoes you put on, one small step at a time. And when she thinks about this new truth, something inside her opens gently, like a window that lets in fresh air after being closed for too long. After resting for a while, she sits up again because she feels a soft curiosity growing inside her, a curiosity about what other small wins she could find today. Not big ones, not complicated ones, but wins that help her breathe easier and trust herself more. She remembers a book she once bought to practice English reading, but never finished because she felt too slow when she tried to read it, and she wonders if today might be a good day to try again, maybe for just a few pages, nothing heavy or stressful. Just simple practice. She walks to her small bookshelf and pulls out the book, brushing dust off the cover gently, and she sits by the window where the light is bright and warm, opening the first page with calm hands. At first, she reads slowly, her eyes moving like careful footsteps across each sentence, and she feels the usual nervous feeling inside her chest, the one that tells her she is too slow or not good enough, but she has learned something new today. And she whispers softly to herself, "It's okay to go slow," and that simple sentence helps her shift from fear to patience. As she continues reading, she begins to enjoy the sound of the English words inside her mind, the rhythm, the softness, the gentle movement of language, and she realizes something else. Confidence does not only grow when you speak. It also grows when you give yourself time to learn without pressure. She reads for 10 minutes, then 20, then 30, and the more she reads, the lighter she feels, like she is walking deeper into a safe forest where the air is clean and her thoughts are not so heavy. She notices that even though she still reads slowly, she is understanding more than she expected, and this makes her smile, a small smile that feels like a warm candle in the cold. She closes the book after a while and leans back, feeling a soft but clear sense of achievement, another quiet win, another stone added to the foundation of her new confidence. And in this peaceful moment, she realizes something important. Confidence is not something that arrives only when you speak well or succeed quickly. Confidence can also come from showing up, from trying again, from giving effort even when nobody sees it. This realization feels like a soft blanket around her shoulders, comforting and gentle, and she holds it close. But then, just as she begins to relax, a familiar doubt floats into her mind like a small gray cloud. She wonders, what if this feeling disappears tomorrow? What if I lose this sense of courage and go back to being afraid? For a moment, the cloud grows larger, and she feels her chest tighten again. But then she remembers the children on the bicycles and the way they fell and still kept trying, and she remembers the warm voice of the barista telling her, "You're welcome," and she remembers how proud she felt reading the English book by herself. And she realizes something powerful. Courage is not something that disappears. It is something you choose again and again. Confidence is not a straight line. It is a gentle wave, sometimes rising, sometimes falling, but always moving if you keep your heart open and your feet willing to take a step. She closes her eyes and lets this truth settle inside her. Even if tomorrow is harder, even if she feels afraid again, she now knows she can still try, and that knowledge is something that fear can never fully take away. Feeling calm again, she decides to go for a short walk outside, maybe to clear her mind, maybe to let her thoughts breathe under the open sky. As she steps outside, the air feels cooler, and the sky is beginning to change colors, moving toward the soft gold and pink of late afternoon. She walks slowly, looking at the familiar streets with new eyes, noticing small things she never paid attention to before, the shapes of the plants outside her neighbor's fence, the way a small bird hops across the sidewalk, the reflection of the sky on a parked car. Everything feels softer today because she is seeing it through a calmer heart. While walking, as she turns the corner and walks toward a small garden near her house, she sits on a bench and thinks deeply about her progress this day. She reflects on the challenge of facing her fear, the exploration of trying new things, the realization that confidence is built through small steps, and the transformation she felt inside her heart, and she knows this journey has only just begun. But she also knows something more important. She is no longer waiting for confidence to come to her. She is walking toward it. And that simple truth fills her with quiet strength. She sits on the bench until the sky begins to turn a deeper shade of orange, and as she stands up to go home, she carries with her a gentle takeaway. Confidence grows not in loud, dramatic moments, but in small wins, tiny choices, and slow steps that you take even when your voice shakes. And with this understanding warming her like sunlight, she walks home with a soft smile, ready for the next part of her journey. In the fourth part of our long and gentle story, we follow Mira into the next morning, a morning that arrives quietly, with soft gray clouds stretching across the sky and a cool breeze brushing against her window. And as she opens her eyes, she feels a strange heaviness inside her chest, the kind of heaviness that comes when yesterday's courage fades a little and doubt begins to knock softly on the door of her mind. And at first, she does not understand why she feels this way, because yesterday had been such a good day, full of small wins and gentle bravery. But as she sits up slowly, she realizes that this feeling is familiar, this quiet return of fear, this gentle wave of uncertainty, and she realizes she is facing a new challenge. Not from the world outside, but from the world inside her own thoughts. She rubs her eyes and whispers, "Why do I feel scared again?" And although the room is calm and nothing frightening is happening, her mind has started telling her old stories again. Stories like, maybe yesterday was just luck, or maybe I can't really do it, or what if I'm not strong enough to keep going? And these thoughts feel heavy, like small gray stones dropping into her heart one by one. But she does not panic. She just sits there and listens to them, the way you listen to distant rain hitting the roof. She knows that doubt is not a sign of failure. Doubt is simply a visitor that comes when you are growing, and the more she thinks about it, the more she realizes that confidence is not about feeling brave every day, but about learning to walk even when fear joins the journey. After a few minutes, Mira swings her legs off her bed and stands up, deciding she will not let the doubt become the whole story of her day, and she walks slowly to the kitchen to make herself a warm drink, something simple and comforting. As she waits for the water to boil, she remembers how strong she felt yesterday in the cafe, how real her small victory was, and she tries to hold on to that memory like someone holding onto a warm stone in cold hands. She whispers to herself, "I did it once. I can do it again," but her voice is soft, almost unsure. She sits at the table with her drink and begins reflecting on why confidence sometimes fades overnight, and she realizes something important. Confidence is not a straight line. Confidence is like the weather, sometimes sunny, sometimes cloudy, sometimes calm, sometimes stormy, but always changing, always moving. This realization makes her breathe easier because she understands she is not broken or weak just because she feels afraid again. She is simply human. As the morning passes, Mira decides to go outside for a walk, hoping the fresh air will clear her mind. She walks through her neighborhood with slow steps, paying attention to the sounds around her, the barking of a distant dog, the soft hum of a motorcycle passing, the rustling of leaves under her feet. And these small sounds help her stay present instead of drowning in her thoughts. She walks to the same park from yesterday, the one where she watched the children riding bicycles, and she sits on the same bench under the tall tree, feeling the cool wind brush against her face. She looks around, noticing that the children are not here today, and the park feels quieter, almost reflective, and this peaceful silence gives her space to explore her feelings more deeply. She thinks about how easy it is to celebrate a good day, but how hard it is to keep going after a difficult morning, and she realizes that today is offering her a new lesson, a harder but more meaningful one. Confidence grows when you keep going even when the excitement is gone. As she sits there, she remembers something her grandmother used to say: "Courage is not loud. Courage is the whisper that says, 'Try again tomorrow.'" These words echo inside her chest, warm and familiar, and suddenly she feels a slow shift inside her heart, a realization that she does not need to feel excited or fearless to continue. She just needs to stay gentle with herself and take another small step, just like she did yesterday. And so she begins thinking about what small steps she can take today, something that is not too big or too frightening, something simple but meaningful. She decides she will practice speaking English again, not by going to a cafe this time, but by recording her own voice at home, saying simple sentences like, "My name is Mira, I am practicing English," or "I want to grow my confidence." And the idea makes her feel both nervous and hopeful because recording her voice feels strange, almost like hearing a part of herself she usually hides, but she knows it is a gentle challenge she can try. On her way home, she notices her feet moving faster, her steps becoming lighter, as if the decision to try something new has given her a small burst of energy. When she reaches her room, she takes out her phone, sits near the window where the light is soft, and opens her voice recorder. She holds the phone for a long moment, staring at the red button, feeling her hands tremble slightly, and the doubt inside her whispers again, "What if you sound strange? What if you hear your mistakes?" But she remembers her promise from yesterday, the promise to take small steps, and she presses the button before her fear can stop her. She takes a slow breath and says softly, "Hello. I am Mira," and when she finishes the sentence, she presses stop and sits completely still. For a moment she feels embarrassed, almost shy, as if someone has heard her, but she reminds herself that she is alone in her room, safe and free to learn, and she decides to listen to the recording. She presses play, and as she hears her own voice speaking English, she feels something surprising. She does not sound as bad as she expected. Her voice is soft, yes, and a little shaky, but it is clear, understandable, and gentle, and she realizes that hearing her own voice is not as scary as she imagined. Encouraged, she records another sentence, then another, slowly building a small collection of tiny audio clips that feel like small seeds planted in her heart. She listens to them again and again, noticing how her voice becomes a little stronger each time, a little clearer, a little steadier, and with each recording she feels a small transformation happening inside her, not loud or dramatic, but real and warm. She realizes that she is learning to trust herself, learning to accept her mistakes without fear, learning to appreciate her progress instead of criticizing her imperfections, and this realization feels like a bright light slowly filling a dark room. As the afternoon sun begins to fade, Mira sits on her bed and reflects on her day, thinking about how it began with doubt and fear, but slowly transformed into a day of quiet courage and new understanding. She realizes something important. Confidence is not about always feeling brave. Confidence is about choosing to act even when fear is standing beside you. It is about being patient with yourself on the difficult days, not just the easy ones. It is about speaking softly to yourself when your mind feels loud with worry. And as she closes her eyes, she feels grateful for this difficult morning because it taught her one of the most important lessons of all, the takeaway that will stay with her for the rest of her journey. Confidence grows when you face doubt with kindness. When you try again even when your heart feels heavy, when you choose small steps on days that feel slow. And with this gentle truth resting inside her, she ends the day with a quiet sense of peace, ready for the next chapter of her story. In this fifth part of our long journey with Mira, we follow her into a new day that begins with a soft, calm light filling her room, and as she wakes up, she feels something different from yesterday's heaviness. She feels a gentle sense of balance. Like her heart is neither too heavy nor too light, just quietly steady, and she lies in bed for a moment listening to the soft sounds outside her window, the distant voices of people walking to work, the soft chirping of a small bird, the quiet hum of a passing car, and these peaceful sounds help her ease into the morning with a sense of warmth. She sits up slowly and stretches her arms, noticing that her body feels a little more relaxed than usual, and she thinks about the recordings she made the day before, remembering the way her voice sounded shaky, soft, but real. And she feels a small but strong pride settle inside her chest because she knows that recording her own voice took courage. Not the loud kind of courage people talk about in movies, but the quiet courage of opening your heart even when nobody is watching. As she moves around her room, getting ready for the day, she begins to feel a soft curiosity growing again, a curiosity about what new steps she might take, and she realizes she wants to practice English with another person today, not just with herself. Not with strangers in a cafe, but with someone familiar and safe. She thinks for a moment and remembers her friend Hannah, someone she has known since childhood, someone who is patient, warm, and always willing to help. The thought of speaking English with a friend feels less frightening than speaking with strangers, but still, Mira feels a small flutter of nerves in her stomach, the kind that gently reminds her she is stepping outside her comfort zone again. And she smiles at this feeling because she recognizes it now not as danger, but as growth. She takes her phone, opens her messages, and begins typing slowly. "Hi, Hannah. I want to practice my English speaking. Can we meet today?" She hesitates before pressing send, reading the sentence again and again, her heart beating a little faster, and then she remembers her grandmother's words about courage being a quiet whisper, and she presses the send button before fear can stop her. A few minutes later, Hannah replies with excitement, "Of course. I'm free this afternoon. Let's meet at the little garden cafe." And as Mira reads the message, she feels a warm wave of comfort because Hannah's kindness feels like a soft blanket wrapped around her shoulders. When the afternoon arrives, Mira walks toward the garden cafe with a slow but steady pace, noticing the warm sunlight touching the tops of the trees and the fresh smell of grass carried by the breeze. She feels nervous, yes, but she also feels ready, and that combination makes her steps feel light. When she reaches the cafe, she sees Hannah waving at her from a small table near the flowers, and Mira feels her heart soften with gratitude. They greet each other with warm smiles, and after ordering their drinks, they sit together in the gentle shade. Hannah leans forward and says, "So, you want to practice English with me?" And her voice is so kind, so open, that the nervousness in Myra's chest loosens slightly. Mira nods and begins speaking in English, slowly, carefully, choosing simple words just like she has practiced. At first her voice shakes a little, and she worries she sounds strange, but Hannah listens with full attention, smiling warmly, nodding gently, encouraging her without interrupting. As they continue, Mira begins to relax and her words start to flow with more ease. She tells Hannah about the cafe visit, about the recordings she made, about her small moments of confidence and her quiet mornings of doubt, and Hannah listens as if every word is precious. And as Mira speaks, she experiences a beautiful realization. Speaking English with someone who cares about her makes the language feel less scary and more human, more alive, more reachable. She realizes that confidence does not only grow inside you, sometimes it grows between people, like a bridge built from kindness and shared moments. But then a small challenge appears when Mira forgets a word she wants to use, and her mind suddenly becomes blank, her heart beats faster, and she feels the old fear rising, the fear of looking foolish, of being judged, of failing in front of someone she cares about. For a moment she wants to switch back to her native language, but she remembers what she learned these past days, that small steps matter more than perfection, and she looks at Hannah and says softly, "I forgot the word," and instead of laughing or judging, Hannah smiles kindly and says, "That's okay. Describe it to me. We'll find the word together." And this simple moment becomes a turning point for Mira because she realizes she does not need to hide her mistakes. She can share them, and sharing them makes them lighter, easier to carry. They spend almost 2 hours talking, laughing, practicing sentences, and exploring new expressions, and with each minute Mira feels her heart becoming lighter, her mind becoming clearer, her voice becoming steadier. She realizes that confidence grows faster when you feel safe, when you feel supported, when you feel connected. She realizes that learning a language is not just about grammar or vocabulary, it is also about trust, trust in yourself and trust in the people who walk with you. And this understanding transforms her from the inside, giving her a new kind of courage, a courage rooted not in trying to be perfect, but in allowing herself to be human. When the conversation finally slows and the sun begins to dip lower in the sky, Mira feels a warm tiredness in her body, the good kind of tiredness that comes after honest effort and gentle growth. They stand up, hug each other, and promise to practice again soon. As Mira walks home through the golden evening light, she reflects on the day, feeling grateful for the challenge, the exploration, the realization, the transformation, and the deep connection that made everything easier. She knows now that confidence is not a lonely journey. Confidence grows stronger when you share your steps with someone who believes in you. And the takeaway she carries home, the soft and beautiful truth she holds close like a small treasure, is this: confidence grows when you let others join your journey, when you allow connection to support you, when you speak even when your voice trembles because you know someone is listening with love. And with this truth warming her heart, she walks toward home with a peaceful smile, ready for the final part of her long and gentle story. In this final part of our long journey with Mira, the day begins with a quiet softness, the kind of morning where the sunlight slowly touches the floor and everything feels peaceful before the world becomes busy. And as Mira opens her eyes, She feels something she has been slowly building without even noticing. She feels a stable calm inside her chest, not the loud excitement of bravery, not the shaking fear of doubt, but a gentle, balanced confidence that sits quietly like a warm cup in her hands, and she lies there for a few moments, letting this calmness settle deeper into her heart. She thinks about all the small steps she has taken these past days, the simple but meaningful choices she made, ordering a drink in English, recording her voice, speaking with her friend Hannah, and she realizes something she never understood before. Confidence is not something you reach one day. Confidence is something you learn to live with, slowly, kindly, patiently, like learning to keep a tiny flame alive even when the wind blows. As she sits up, Mira whispers softly, "I feel different," not because she has become a completely new person, but because she has become someone who tries, someone who steps forward, someone who does not hide from her own fear. And this realization fills her with quiet pride. After getting dressed, she walks to her mirror again, the same mirror she stood in front of when she made her first promise, and she looks at her reflection with soft eyes, noticing a subtle but real change. Her shoulders sit a little straighter. Her eyes look a little more open, and her expression carries a calm strength she has not seen before, and she says softly, "Thank you," a thank you to herself, to her efforts, to her small brave moments. As she moves around her room preparing for the day, Mira begins thinking about her next steps, not big steps, not complicated steps, but new simple ways she can continue growing, because she now understands that growth is not a journey with an ending. It is something that continues gently, like breathing. She decides she wants to visit the cafe again today, not because she wants to challenge herself, but because she wants to enjoy the feeling of doing something that once scared her and now feels familiar. She wants to experience her own progress in real life, not just in her thoughts. So she picks up her bag, puts on her shoes, and steps outside, noticing how different the world feels when her heart is steady. The trees look a little greener, the sky feels a little wider, and the simple act of walking feels like a quiet celebration of who she is becoming. When she reaches the cafe, she feels a small flutter of nerves, but this time the nerves do not control her. They simply walk beside her, gentle and harmless. She enters the cafe with a soft smile, and the barista from before recognizes her and says, "Good morning," in the same warm voice, and this time Mira answers, "Good morning," in a clear, steady tone, feeling no shame, no fear, only a gentle confidence growing inside her. She orders her drink again in English, a little more smoothly than before, and when she sits down at a table by the window, she takes a slow breath and realizes something small has changed in her life, something small but important. She no longer avoids fear. She steps into it carefully, kindly, and she comes out stronger each time. As she sips her drink, she watches the people around her, the soft chatter, the gentle music, the quiet movement of life happening around her, and she begins reflecting on her journey. She thinks about the challenge she faced at the beginning, the heavy doubt, the old stories her mind used to tell her, the fear of making mistakes, and she realizes these fears never truly disappeared. She simply learned to walk with them instead of running from them. She explores this thought deeply, realizing something important. Confidence is not about removing fear. Confidence is about understanding fear and choosing action anyway, and this understanding fills her with a sense of empowerment. She takes out her small notebook and writes a simple sentence, "I am learning to try," And these words bring warmth to her chest because they feel true, simple, and strong. She sits there quietly, letting the emotions of the past days settle inside her like soft dust floating down after the wind slows, and she begins to see her story clearly. She sees how each small moment became a stepping stone, how each little action, each tiny effort, each breath of courage built something solid inside her. When she finishes her drink, she decides to walk through the nearby garden before going home, and as she steps outside, the warm air wraps gently around her, and she feels connected to the world in a way she has not felt before. She walks past the flowers, listening to the faint sound of leaves brushing together in the soft breeze, and she thinks about her grandmother's words, the words that have echoed through her heart from the beginning. Confidence is like a small bird. It doesn't fly to you. You must hold out your hand and let it rest there slowly. And now she understands what those words really mean. Confidence is not something you wait for. Confidence is something you create by showing up, by breathing through fear, by taking small steps again and again. She sits on a bench under a tree and lets the realization deepen inside her. She did not become confident because of one big moment. She became confident because she allowed herself to grow slowly, softly, and kindly. As she sits in the quiet garden, Mira senses the final transformation of her journey. She realizes she is no longer the girl who hid from English conversations, no longer the girl who feared sounding strange, no longer the girl who waited for courage to arrive from somewhere outside herself. She has become someone who tries, someone who learns, someone who speaks even when her voice trembles, someone who trusts small steps. And she understands now that this is the true meaning of confidence, not perfection, not control, not being fearless, but choosing to move forward with kindness toward yourself. She closes her eyes for a moment and whispers, "I am proud of me," a sentence she has never said to herself before, a sentence that feels like sunlight spreading inside her chest. When she finally stands up to walk home, she feels light, peaceful, and full of gentle strength. She knows her journey is not finished. She knows there will be more days of doubt, more moments of fear, more challenges that make her stumble, but she also knows she has everything she needs inside her to stand up again. She knows the truth now. Confidence grows every time you try, every time you breathe through fear, every time you choose kindness over pressure. And as she walks home, she carries the final takeaway of her long and gentle story, a truth she wants to hold for the rest of her life. You don't need to be fearless to grow. You only need to be willing to try. And that willingness, that gentle bravery, that quiet courage is what makes confidence bloom inside the heart.